We're going to do something a little bit different than we've done in the past. I felt like just coming back a few months ago, had a sense that maybe we'd do something different on Mother's Day. And so I spoke to one of our moms, not because she's a better mom than anyone else or anything else, but because she is a good mom, and she has a unique story in her motherhood. She has a biological child and an adopted child as a mother. There are mothers here that are much more seasoned in the sense that you have been a mom for many years, for decades, have kids at every age and range, and hers are still small. But sometimes whenever it comes to particularly things about motherhood and fatherhood, sometimes a fresh voice can cause us to pause and think about things a little bit differently. And sometimes within the body of Christ, there are those who just have a unique ability to communicate, and we try to utilize people's gifts in the best way possible. And so I have asked, actually some months ago, Shelley Alcorn if she would actually share the Mother's Day message, some of that being testimony form, and then sharing as a message. And so I just want to ask you to give her a great big Westtown welcome as she comes and shares this morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Happy Mother's Day. Thank you. As Pastor said, when he asked me, I thought, sure, I'll do it. I go home and I'm like, what? Huh? I feel like I'm the least qualified mom at our church. I've been doing mommy for only 4 years, and I feel like I was kind of thrusted into it, although I wanted to do it for a very long time. So I sat and I thought, God, what would you want me to say? And I just felt him say, tell your story. And we as women, what do we like to hear? Stories. We like to hear everyone's story, right? Because we're so relational. And so that's what I'm going to tell you this morning is my story into becoming a mommy. So as most of us women, little girls, we play dollies, we dress up, and that's what we want. It's somehow God ingrained in us to be a mom. And so that's what I wanted. And when people ask me, hey, Shelley, what would you like to be when you grow up? You want to be a teacher? You want to be a doctor? I want to be a mom. Well, yeah, that too, but what else do you want to do? I want to be a mom. And just that was me. I wanted to be a mom. And I think part of it could have been that I had such a great mom. She was so nurturing, and she was so loving, and I think that had something to do with it, but also I think it had to do with what God was putting within inside of me. The destiny that he was putting on my life was beginning to come alive even as a young little girl. And my mom, being the wonderful mom she was, started cultivating early the need for education, and I think that is great. She poured that on me because we come from a very simple life, a very simple financial means. And I think she wanted to instill in me education so that I could provide for myself and not feel like I was ever in lack, and I could provide for my kids. So right from the get-go, my mom is trying to give me the best tools that I needed to be a great person in society and a great mom to support my family as well. So I started doing that. I went to college for a little while. Like I said, I come from very simple financial means. And so I remember there were times my mom would be before the college into the financial office, and she's trying to help me get financial assistance. And unfortunately, I did not fit the category they were looking for financial assistance. And she left angry because she knew that financially she couldn't give me that education. She was trying the college system to give me the financial education, and it just wasn't there for me. And she wanted the best. So the best that she could give in my early 20s was a place to live. And she kept me on her insurance as long as she could. And so during the day, I went to school, and by night, I funded my own college education just through the restaurant. And went for nursing for a while, didn't work for me. And I finally transitioned over to massage therapy. And I completed massage therapy school, took my boards, and although I'm a very horrible test taker because I get so much anxiety, and if any of you have been in small group with me, At Celebrate Recovery, you'll understand exactly what I mean, and you're tracking with me, how I go with my anxiety. So thank God there was a very small testing room where I can get up and I can exercise. What muscle are we talking about here? And nobody's going to think I'm weird. So I passed massage therapy school. A little bit of fast forward in life, I met Philip. And in 2004, we married, and I started my career as a massage therapist in a massage office. And then eventually, I opened my own business, which made my husband very proud. And I started doing massage therapy in our little hometown of Plant City, Florida. Well, as the military does, we were thrusted into moving to Jacksonville. And I started thinking, what am I going to do with my massage business? I got to close it down here. Am I going to open it up there? And I just started praying about it. What do I want to do? And I decided massage was really not for me. There's something missing inside of me. I don't feel like I'm fulfilling right now. And just in a moment of prayer with the Lord, I got the revelation that being just a mom is just enough. And I didn't have to make it out in the world. That's just not in the creation that God made me. And so I felt alive because I knew within inside of me, being a mom is what I wanted to do. And having the confirmation from God that I can go ahead and do that, I felt like I was birthing a new me. I can become a mom now. And like I said, I was in my early 30s, and it was about the time my husband and I had decided we're going to have children too, because we were, you sit down and you're like, this is what we're going to do with our life. And at the 5-year mark, we're going to start children. And so it was right about that 5-year mark, we decided to start children. So we tried for a while, and nothing was happening. I'm like, okay. I had that seasonal allergy thing going on, went to the doctor, and she said, any other concerns you have? I said, yeah, actually, my husband and I have been trying to conceive. Is there any kind of simple testing that we can do to see that maybe kind of what's going on with me? And so after multiple referrals and appointments later, I got the diagnosis of polycystic ovary syndrome. I'm like, huh? And so part of me was like, okay, what does this mean? And when it was explained to me that basically my ovaries had lots of cysts on them, kind of like my preteen face with acne. And my pituitary gland wasn't allowing the right hormone to release to cause even the eggs I had inside of me to release. So it's like these little eggs are so cutesy and sitting in their little ovary basket and they're not dropping. I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? She said, well, we can put you on some medicine and we can do some trials. You can do IVF. I'm like, okay. So in one way, I had some peace because as a preteen girl, I had such great pain in my body. I'm like, okay, I have an answer to what's going on with me. And eventually, as I got older, I learned how to deal with that, just doing like a mad clean of the house, just to occupy my mind and down in some Motrin. But on the other hand, I'm like, okay, we've decided to have kids, and I've got a roadblock. And then I went into my prayer closet, and I'm like, Lord, I don't really understand what you're doing with me. I knew as a little girl I wanted to be a mom, and I started pursuing education. I started pursuing a career. I didn't feel fulfilled, and I prayed to you, God, what do I do? And you confirmed to me that I'm to be a mom. Why am I getting this diagnosis of infertility? And I struggled with the Lord with that for a long time. And I learned to do what I call the David prayer. If you've ever read the Psalm, you understand what I'm saying. He'll praise the Lord and do these wonderful exhortations of God, and then he'll say, my enemies are at my heels. They're going to burn me down. They're going to bury me in a pit. Woe is to me. And then, but you are God. You are almighty. You're my victor. You're my stronghold. And that's the prayer I started to adapt with the Lord, because for me, I had to get some of that why out. But I knew God is sovereign, and I knew my life was in his hands. And so with everything in my life, I've adapted what I call the David sandwich prayer. Praise, I'm about to die. Something's going on with me. You are my great victor. So Philip and I talked about it. What do we want to do? We've hit this roadblock. Do we do IVF? Do I get on all these medications that they have a whole long list of side effects? What? And so I started praying, and I went to church one Sunday. I came home. I think he was actually deployed at this time, so it was just me, nice alone time with God. I love my Sunday afternoon nap, so I laid across the bed, and I'm praying. And I started thinking back on my life, thinking about the different turns that I'd made that weren't so good, and thinking about all the ways that God just gently wooed me back. Even though I was brought up in a Christian home, I knew right from wrong. Things happened to me. I made some bad choices, but God still was there the whole time and wooed me back. And I was like, God, you are so faithful. You are so loving. You love me so much. Even though I knew better, you came back and you captured me and you rescued me, just like the 1 and the 99. And I just felt so ooey gooey mushy with the Lord. I'm laying there, tears are just streaming down my face and collecting puddles by my head in the bed. And it was like my train of thought changed instantly. I feel so adopted, just like the word says. And I felt the Lord press strongly on my heart. This same feeling of adoption that you have to me, how I've come to you and I've made you my own, made you my daughter, I'm going to bring you through an adopted child. And I lost it. I cried because at that moment I had a peace. I had a peace. This is what we're going to do. Yeah, I may be infertile, but you know what? God told me, God laid before the foundations of the earth, when he created me in my mother's womb, Shelley's going to be a mom. And I don't care what goes on in her life, Shelley's going to be a mom. And so he told me how I'm going to be a mom. I was elated. And that's okay that I don't have to carry my baby, is it? And so I struggled a little bit with that. I struggled with, okay, I'm not going to feel the movement. I'm not going to watch my belly grow. But you know what? This is what God has put in my life. And I understand that everything that we do, God has placed a specific call in our life. And God brings our stories about in a different way. If our stories were all the same, and we opened up the book of your story and my story, and it was the same story, we'd never go to the library, right? I've read all those books. But because God writes our stories, and they have such twists and turns and different little endings, it makes it intriguing, and that's what makes testimonies intriguing, because it's so different. And we can see how God does things so differently with us. So Philip and I are at peace with adoption. We start telling people we're going to adopt. And at this moment, I started drawing a lot of my hope and my strength from Scripture, because people are going to have things to say. And so I went to Isaiah 54, 1 through 5. Sing, O barren woman, you who never bore a child, burst into song, shout for joy, you who were never in labor, because more are your children of the desolate woman than of a husband, says the Lord. Enlarge your tent, stretch wide your curtains, don't hold back, lengthen your cords, strengthen your stakes, for you will spread out to the right and you'll spread out to the left, and your descendants will possess the nations and settle in desolate cities. Do not be afraid. You will not be put to shame, because infertility places that shame on us. Do not fear disgrace. You will not be humiliated. You will forget the shame of your youth and remember no more the reproach of your widowhood. Your Maker is your husband. The Lord Almighty is his name. The Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. He is called the God of all the earth. Psalms 113:9. He makes the barren woman abide in a house as a joyful mother of children. Praise the Lord. Psalms 128:3. Your wife will be a fruitful vine within your house, your children like olive plants around your table. And I can envision that, because whenever we think about fertility, I'm a very visual thinker, and so I started thinking about Western movies, and they're coming across here, the OK Corral. People are hiding, and all you can see is tumbleweed coming by. And I'm like, that's my womb. It's tumbleweed. Okay? So I'm getting the vision. God has made me a fruitful vine for my husband. He can bring those little fruits in any other way he wants to, but I'm called a fruitful vine. And I'm envisioning my table where I have to get one of those that's made like really long, and all these little kitties and are lined up at the table, and we've got like booster seats out here, and we've got little high chairs out here, and there's just kids from one end of the house to the other. I'm like, that's me. That's what the Lord has called me. Psalms 127, 3-5. Behold, your children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. The fruit of another woman's womb is going to be my reward. The Lord has said so. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are your children of one's youth. How blessed is the man, woman, whose quiver is full of them. And I could just see, y'all watch Catching Fire? Yeah? I could see here I am with my arrow, and I've got my little sack here, back here, and all my kids are back here. Yeah, I got lots of them, okay? They will not be ashamed when they speak to their enemies at the gate. And I drew lots of hope from stories. If you go through the Bible, there were tons of barren women. Rebecca, Leah, Rachel, Sarah, we all know Hannah, and Elizabeth. And that's where I drew my hope. And of course, from Luke 1:37, for nothing is impossible with God. So I'm in my prayer closet, and I'm building up hope with what God has given me in his word. But of course, people, like I said, have things to say. And so when I start sharing my dream with them, well, are you pregnant yet? No. Well, you can have my kids if you want. You don't know how lucky you are. Kids are a handful, and they're expensive. And what I felt like saying is, if you're going to give your kids away, give them here. I'll take your kids. I'll take that handful. I'll find whatever money I can to raise these kids, because God's called me to be a mom. You don't want them, give them here. You're so young, you have plenty of time. Well, as we all women know, our biological clock is going round and around, and when I hit 30, I don't feel so young. Looking on this side, a little bit more older than 30. My 30 looked a little young. But when you're 30, you don't feel so young, and when you don't have children. And when we started telling people that we accepted adoption as the way God was going to grow our family, this is what I got from friends and from my doctor at the time. Well, you've given up on your body's ability to conceive. No, I haven't. I'm believing in what God has told me, because his promises are yes and amen. Oh, you can just get a dog. I had a dog. Dog is not the same as a baby. Or here's another one I come across women. Well, I just look at my husband and I get pregnant. Thanks. We've done a whole lot more looking, okay, and we're still not pregnant. And here are the super spiritual things that people like to say to us. When the time is right, it will all come. Just don't stress. Have faith. Pray about it. Excuse me, what are you saying about my faith? Are you saying I don't pray? Are you saying I don't believe in God? Hello, this is a medical diagnosis, okay? Had nothing to do with my faith, all right? Maybe God's not called you to be a mom. Maybe he's got other plans for you. That was no comforting either. I know exactly how you're feeling. Oh, no, I don't think so. You don't know my feelings. It's a good thing I never said those things to people. And then this was the real kicker at times, because although I had my hope and my faith in the Lord, you go up and down with your feelings. And on my moments when I was down, and I come across because pregnancy to me is so beautiful. No matter how pregnant she was and how big, and she said, this baby is on my bladder. My back is killing me. I can't sleep. I am inducing at the earliest date I can. I got to get this kid out. And I'm like, really? Because all of those things you're complaining about, I would love to feel right now, okay? So, anyway, Philip and I ignored all those things that we heard from people, and we started following the plan that God told us to do, and that was adoption. This was about 2010. As the military goes, we relocated once again to the D.C. area, and so we started, I started looking for adoption agencies. My husband was in a stressful job. He was traveling a lot. Thank God it wasn't overseas, but there's a couple overseas trips, but it wasn't like he was in harm's way. But he was traveling extensively within the nation and to other nations as well. So I'm at home, and I accepted a job just at Best Buy because that is not what I was going to do for a living. God's called me to be a mom. I need something to just occupy my time. So I started researching adoption agencies. I found a reputable one. I'm like, we're going with this. So he comes back from a trip. I'm like, okay, I got us an appointment with this agency. We're going to go over there. We're going to talk to them. We're going to get all the information. We got hooked up with them, filled out the paperwork. We found out they have once every 4 months a training that you have to do. Once every 4 months. He's traveling. And so there was another one coming up, and I said to him, okay, there's a training coming up in April. We're going to this one. And he's like, he looks through his calendar, and he goes, I think I can make it. And I'm saying inside of myself, if we can't make this training and get this going, I'm going to absolutely implode. So thank God for him. Yes. The dates worked out. So we started the training process, and it was completely overwhelming. They give you all kinds of information about grants. You got to fill out all this paperwork for them, for the state. You got to write basically your life story, which is kind of hard to do. How did you come to know Christ? What church you go to? You need all these references. They talk to you about emotional needs that children have when they're adopted. They talk about bringing the baby home. They talk about the questions that children are going to have when they're adopted. They talk about transracial adoption, which we met this wonderful man because Philip and I decided, okay, God gave us this roadblock, and we're not going to tell him or anybody else what kind of kid we're going to accept in our family because we love all children, and we believe the Word of God says in Psalm 68:6, He sets the lonely in families. So He was going to set that lonely baby into our family. And so when we were talking about how open we are, and both of us are like, we're going through this, what seemed like a horrific checklist. Will you accept? Will you accept? And we're like, yeah. And we got a little bit of flack from people whenever we were telling them that we're open, and they said, well, don't you want a child that looks like you? And we said, well, why? We're not making it. That's not going to look like us anyway. But he gave us the most effective tool that we had, which was this little bitty saying, if you don't mind, it don't matter. And we didn't mind, so it didn't matter. So anyway, all these different things that we had to do for the adoption process. And then you got to wait, and you got to send papers off, and you got to wait for them to come back from the state. And so this was in April, and they're telling us it could be up to 2 years. We're like, okay. In the meantime, Philip's very busy. He's going back and forth on all these trips. I'm still at home making a home for me. Yeah. Eventually, which seemed like forever, in July, so April, same year, July, we get a phone call. And it was kind of scary because we had already gotten one of these phone calls, and we had met a birth mom. And we fit this particular first birth mom's criteria was very narrow, and we fit that. And she was looking at 2 other families. And so we're like, we got this. We're young. This will be our first kid. She's going to want us. And we fit all the criteria. Well, to our surprise, she chose another family. We were a little heartbroken. And so we had some tiffs about it. We had some tiffs with God about it. We got over it. But we got the second call, and our agency said, this is different this time. And I had some anxiety about it. She said, you don't understand. This mom chose just you. She wants to meet just you. No other families, just you. So I said, okay. And then Philip tells me, I'm traveling. We have a birth mom that has chosen us. What do you mean you're traveling? But the agency talked to her, and she's very relaxed, easygoing mama. She said, that's okay. I'll meet the adoptive mom. So I went to meet her. And my nerves were shot. I was just a wreck. I'm like, I'm doing this by myself. I don't know what to say to her. What if I say the wrong thing? What if there's something about me she doesn't like? What if it's my hair? What if it's part of my life story that she's asking? So I go to the agency that night, and I bought this little potted flower to give her. And it was at night, so it wasn't a busy building. And I go in, and this very, very pregnant lady comes down the stairs, and she walks past me to the bathroom, and I smile. And I'm like, I think that's her. So I go up to the room, and I wait, and sure enough, in a few minutes, she comes back. I guess baby was sitting on her bladder. And she was just this, I could tell she was nervous too, but she seemed a little bit more calm than me. She was just the sweetest lady I had ever met. And she chose us. And so before long, this was early July, and he was to be induced July 19th. And she invited us to come to the hospital on the day she was to be induced. And I'm a wreck because my baby's coming the next day, and I'm talking to my friends, and they're like, you need to get sleep now because you're not going to get it later. And I know that. I mean, I kind of knew that. I didn't have experience with that, but I heard. But you know how it is when you have such anxiety and anticipation for something to come. You can't sleep. I couldn't sleep. So we get there the next day. And during our training, they tell us a lot of your information, a lot of her information is going to be very private. But when you go to the hospital, information just kind of leaks. And you just have to commit to being respectful of her privacy and not share any of that information. And we're like, oh, yeah, okay. So I go in there, and here she is. It's like 7 in the morning. And she's laying in the bed, and the nurse is starting her fluids. My eyes are this big because I don't know what to say. And the nurse starts asking her questions, and I'm watching her, and she's shifting from side to side. And she's moving her body in the bed because she's uncomfortable, and it's hitting me. This beautiful, beautiful woman is laying there with my son in her belly. She gave up all her rights because she was giving him the right to live. And there was so much emotion within me, I couldn't stand it because she was giving her life for this baby. And a lot of people think, they have misconceptions of birth moms. They think they're giving their baby away because they don't want their baby. Well, I'm here to tell you, this mama loved her baby. She wanted her baby, but she knew her personal circumstances would not allow her to give that baby the life she felt her baby deserved. And so she chose us. From this little profile book that we created, looks just like a memory book. She looked through all these pages, and from the best that I could portray of who we are, she decided, this is the family I want to give my son the best. And so the nurse is asked, and I'm like, this. And the nurse is asking questions, and she asked me my name, said it, spelled every letter, and then it hit me. Oh my goodness, I just gave my personal information, which is some of the things that they were telling you. To be respectful of her privacy. You need to be respectful of your own privacy. Don't share things. But suddenly, after meeting her and knowing the sacrifice she was making for this baby, my personal information didn't even matter. She can have it. Because the life she was giving us just matters so much more. So I decided at that moment, it's probably a little nerve-wracking for her that I sit there with my just peering eyes on her as she's wrestling back and forth in the bed to try to get comfortable. And so I said, I'm going to step to the waiting room, and when you're ready that I can come, you can just send someone to get me. And she said, okay. And I didn't know how this was going to play out, because every birth mom has their choice how it plays out. Some birth moms choose that there's no interaction at all. And some birth moms choose a completely open experience where the adoptive mom is in there for the delivery. And I just didn't know what her expectation was, and I wanted to flow the way she wanted, because as they told us in training, the very fact that we were there, we should consider it as a gift. Because at that moment, it's still her body, and it's still her baby. So we had no right to anything, and I felt very gifted to be there. And so we waited, and about 1:27, this is 7 o'clock in the morning when she went in, 1:27, a nurse comes to get me. And, we're doing this, looking down the hall, people coming in and out of rooms. Oh, my goodness, is it time? So about 1:27, this nurse came in. She called my name. We're the only ones in the waiting room. Me. That's me. So I stand up. Well, besides my husband and my mom had flew up. And she's putting the armband on me, the mama's armband on me, saying that I can have complete access to this baby. And I'm shaking. And I must have told her my name after she's already called it 10 times. The whole walk down there. And Philip doesn't know what to expect either, because he didn't know if she's about to have the baby. And he's like, do I wait here? I don't want to go in there yet. And so I'm like, do we go? Do we not? And she goes, well, you can come if you want to. I'm like, okay. So he's followed me back there, and the door opens to the room, and my eyes were so full of tears, I couldn't even hardly see her. The room is dim. I could see her, my eyes fixed on her, the life giver, in the bed. And I'm shaking, and I couldn't see anything. And the first words that came out of her mouth to me, do you want to hold him? Yes. And so in his little tiny bed beside her, the nurse picked him up and placed him in my arms. And all I could do was cry. And they told us in training, one of the most very important things that you need to tell her is how much you love him and adore him, because they're going to be searching your face. Is my baby enough for you? And he was so much of enough, because he was fulfilling a promise that God gave me. And so over and over again, all I can say was, he's perfect. He's so beautiful. Over and over again. And Philip, I could hear the over my shoulder, and he's crying. They had to start getting her situated to move her to the next room. And then they swing the curtain around to give her some privacy, and he goes, I want to hold him. I want to hold him. So I transferred the baby to his arms, and we just loved on him. And you can tell some people don't understand the adoption process. There were some nurses there that didn't understand. As they were transferring her to her room, we got some weird looks. And they didn't have a room for me. Obviously, she had a room. But she talked to the nursing staff, and she told them how much she wanted us to do some bonding with the baby. And so the little nursery where the baby's kept, where there's a nursing mother teaching room next door. And so the nurses decided that this is where we could stay with the baby. And so we went in there, and for the entire day, we spent at her gift loving on Isaiah, her baby. We cuddled him, and we fed him, and we just had a wonderful experience. Which, by the way, she asked us if we wanted to name the baby. We didn't want to be so presumptuous that we're naming your child, but she even gifted us with that. And we named him Isaiah, which is salvation of God. And she asked us how to spell it and everything. So visiting hours were over, and I had been told by someone that she said that they were going to have me a room to stay with the baby overnight. And nothing was said. I saw some nurses bickering over it, and I kept telling myself, this is a gift. And so I said, thank you very much for letting me visit with him, hold him, and love on him. I'll be back tomorrow. I didn't try to claim my night stay, because what I had up until that point was so wonderful and so much of a gift. I wanted to bow out gracefully. I didn't want any hard feelings with anyone. And so we left. I get home, and he says, "You need to sleep." And I said, "I can't. We're bringing him home tomorrow." So I couldn't sleep. And bright and early the next morning at 8 o'clock, we get to the hospital. And the very first thing, when I rounded the corner in the nurse's station, "We have a room for you." Gift number 2. And so right around the corner in a wing that they had shut down because they weren't busy, they opened up a room just for us to love on Isaiah the whole time until his discharge. And we took him home, and we were both elated, all day just staring and watching him. I'd like to take a moment to address a couple moms today that probably get overlooked during this time of Mother's Day. First, I'd like to address birth moms. I know there could possibly be some birth moms in our congregation today, and I just want to say to you, thank you. I want to say thank you on behalf of every adopted mom. I want to say thank you for making me a mother. I want to say thank you for the sacrifice that you gave for this baby to grow in your body. You gave up sleepless nights. That baby was on your bladder, and it was an inconvenience. But because you said you wanted this baby to live, you gave me the opportunity to be a mom. And I have no gift that I can give you but my thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. God is love, and that's what you have shown me. I want to address the mamas who chose abortion. And I did say mama because you know what? God made you a mama, and there is nothing in this world that can take that from you. And your precious little babies are in the presence of truth right now. And absolute truth with the Holy One is love. Your baby loves you. Your Heavenly Father loves you. And He forgives. And He heals your heart. I want to encourage you, if that's you, find a good friend to talk to. Find someone to confide in, because this is something that God is not intended for you to carry alone. God loves you. God heals. God forgives. And I want to address the infertile mamas. There is not one word I can say that can heal your pain. I've walked a similar path as you. I cannot say that I know your feelings. I have my own feelings that I had as an infertile mother. And I want to say I'm sorry. And I want to say to you, I would love to pray with you. I would love to believe with you. And I'd love to cry with you, because sometimes as an infertile woman, I just wanted someone to cry with me. And I will cry with you. God, for you, is hope. So we bring beautiful baby Isaiah home, and we're smitten with love. But as we quickly learn, life gets to be a little overwhelming with a newborn. Philip is still traveling, and here I am with just me and baby. And I'm trying to decipher who I am now, because I'm not just Shelley, and I'm not just a wife anymore. I'm also a mom, and it began to get really stressful because I'm trying to get sleep, because there's a demanding, beautiful baby that needed to be fed. Faithfully, that boy was eating 2 hours on the nose. I didn't get any sleep, and I was exhausted, and I wanted to love him to pieces sometimes. And I was trying to balance the needs of the house to keep the place clean, and I've always, because the home is my centerpiece. When Philip got home, he learned this right when we got married. He was calling before the day was even done. What's for dinner? Because when he walked in the door, I wanted him to feel like he had a clean house and dinner's on the table. So with now a new baby, that was quite a responsibility. It was quite overwhelming to try to balance all these things. And I started to get a little discouragement from people around me. I guess they felt that because I didn't birth this child, my natural motherly instincts that God gave me were just not there. I didn't have them because I didn't have the baby. And I would get some really weird comments, like someone I deeply respected. I'm sitting in church. I just fed my baby, and I'm burping him. And she comes to me and she says, "You might want to try this." And so now she's telling me how to burp the baby. I'm like, as if I'm not feeling inadequate already. So I got inadequate feelings from people, just thinking that because I didn't birth him, I had no idea what it was like to be a mom. And then I had inadequate feelings that I was putting on myself. I was making mistakes like every other mom made. I sit him in a bumbo. We all know what a bumbo is, the little seat. And it clearly states on there, "Do not put on the elevated surface." Put him in the bathroom, put my makeup on, and he's so cute. And he's sitting in the bumbo on the toilet, closed, obviously. The tub is right there, and he was getting a little bit bigger, and he arched his back and decided he didn't want to be in there and flew out of that bumbo. Tiny little head hits the tub, and I'm going, I'm the most horrible mother. I scoop him up. I take him to the couch. I'm praying raising the dead type prayers over him. Oh, God, he's dead. I killed him. No wonder you didn't make me a mom. And then one time, because I couldn't manage time with a newborn, it was time for his appointment. And we're in D.C., okay? And we only lived about 8 minutes down the road from where he was to go for his appointment. But I'm in a hurry, and it was raining. And so I put him in the car, and it's raining, and I'm doing this through D.C. traffic, through the rain. Now, D.C. people know snow. D.C. people don't know rain, okay? I can drive rain. They don't drive rain. They drive snow. So it was pretty dangerous. And I pull into the clinic. I get in there. I open the door. My baby was not buckled. This gift baby, to me, I drove in D.C. traffic in the rain with people who don't know how to drive in the rain. He would have gotten killed. If we'd have hit something, he went through that back window. And I just melted on the ground before the Lord. No wonder why you didn't make me a mother. Look what I've done to him. So with all of the inadequate feelings I had on myself and what other people were doing, I was a wreck mess during this time. Thank God I had Kristen. Kristen was a lady about my age that I met through the adoption process. They were adopted. She had 2 biological boys, and she was adopted. They wanted a girl, and she was adopting a girl. And so her daughter Jordan is the same age as Isaiah. Thank God for her. And she was younger than me, too, but she had wisdom beyond her years. And so when people were telling me how inadequate I was as a mom, when I was telling myself how inadequate I was as a mom, when the doctor would look at my very chunky baby and ask me if I needed to see a nutritionist because he wasn't fed enough, she was encouraging me. You are a great mom. She'd give me some advice, but she was always encouraging me. She was what I needed at that time. I'm separated from my mom. She's in Florida. I'm in D.C., but Kristen gave me what I needed to plug along as a mom. She come alongside me to help me be the mom as an encourager. So among all the stress of this new life of having a baby and making a home, Philip was traveling, and I'm going on a trip to see my parents down in Florida. So I get on this plane, and I'm overwhelmed. I've got this infant, and I'm pretty sure everyone on this plane knows I'm an adoptive mom. I didn't birth this child. I have no idea what I'm doing. In fact, I felt so inadequate, honestly, I carried his birth certificate with me everywhere I went. Because when you complete an adoption with a child, the birth certificate is changed. Just like when God brings us into his bloodline, and he becomes our father, our birth certificate is changed, and it says, the Most Almighty is your dad. So on Isaiah's birth certificate, it said, Philip and Shelley Alcorn. So just to and I have my ID, in case they need to see a picture ID. I have my picture ID and his birth certificate. This is my baby, okay? So I'm bouncing him, and he's screaming, and I'm trying to feed him. And you know how you get on the airline. We've all heard it, those of us that have flown. Thank you for flying, blah, 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 airline. And they start going through the emergency exits like this. And then she comes up there and she says, should the cabin pressure change, an oxygen mask will fall. First, put the oxygen mask on yourself before assisting others. Do not try to assist anyone else before putting on your oxygen mask. It will not fully deflate. Do not remove your oxygen mask until someone has come by to let you know it is safe. And it hits me. If I'm not taking care of myself, how am I going to take care of this baby? How am I going to take care of my husband? I need a break. I need some time out. I need to be able to hand him to someone I trust, like my mother, and take a break. I need to rest more. I need to let the dishes just go some days and sit in the sink. I need to not vacuum. I need to just rest so that I have enough for me, so that I can give enough to him. Number 2 thing that hits me out of this oxygen mask spiel, I need to be receiving my oxygen from the oxygen giver. I need to make sure that I'm getting his fresh air into me so that I can give my family what they need. Okay. All right. Note taken. So fast forward life a little bit. We're having a good time with baby, raising him with all the ups and downs. And so we decide in about 2012, because we know we're infertile, we can't have children. 2012, we're going to start adopting our next baby. So here we go. We've done this before. We know what to do. We found the agency. We made a profile book. We filled out the paperwork. And boy, we were hot. Our book was being handed out like candy at a parade. And moms were looking at it. And we were like, yeah, we're young, we're good looking, we have a baby already. We are going to get a baby. And a mom would look, she'd choose someone else. A mom would look, she'd choose someone else. And a lot of you probably remember this journey with us because a lot of you came alongside us. There were some very hurtful times of the waiting, and you prayed with us, and Westtown carried us through, and that I cannot repay. I appreciate that so much. And so when a year went by, nothing. We waited for like 4 or 5 months before we were chosen for Isaiah, and a year goes by for our next baby. This is unheard of. God, what are you doing? So we're having the stress of that. We're having the stress of the military life. We're having the stress of several other things. Unfortunately, we put the adoption on hold. And because as stress does, the marriage went on hold. 2013, Philip and I separated because life got to be a lot. The stress of everything, not just the adoption, a bunch of things. You know how the word says, little foxes spoil the vine? That's what had happened to us. We had come to a time we were not prayed up. We had not been together in the Word. We had not been together spending time. We'd been doing our own thing. And little foxes came to our beautiful vine and just nipped every day until there was nothing left of us. And we separated. And several of you surrounded me during that time, surrounded us in prayer, lifted us up to the Lord. And just a few months later, as the way God does, He brought restoration to our marriage. And so here we are, a restored family. Thank the Lord for Him alone. A month and a half later, we get the surprise of our life. Because we obviously were not trying to have a baby. We're pregnant. What? At this point, we had been 10 years married. We were not using anything to keep from getting pregnant this entire time because we were infertile. And here we are, we've gone through this traumatic time, and we're pregnant. We were elated because only God can do that. Only God can take something that's so broken, restore it, not just to something that it was, but to something better. And I can say now, 11 years of marriage, Philip and I are better than we've ever been because God has brought us to be better. We're not trying to do it on our own. We're not trying to make a marriage on our own. We put God first, and God has made us better. So here I am in the journey of pregnancy, and I get to feel him on my bladder, and I get to feel my back. But you know what? And I don't know if I would have came into it this way if it had just come so easy. I don't know. That wasn't me. But I know what the me was is it was such a struggle. And so with every new thing, it was a joy. When he was on my bladder, whoop, I got to go pee. I got a baby. And you know how pregnant women sit kind of funny? Because the baby's there, kind of like this. I'm like, I'm never going to do that. Guess what? You got to. So baby just kind of drops there when he gets a little big. And every time my back hurt, or, you know, when you're walking, well, I'm talking to the ladies anyway. You know, when you're walking and all of a sudden something hit you and you're like this, it's all right. I'd get some of those. And I took joy in my pregnancy. I heard so many horror stories, but I'm like, look, I was not and I am. I was barren and I'm not. And I'm happy. And every step of the way, no matter how it feels, I'm taking joy in it. And I did. Philip will tell you, I have never known of a pregnant woman how happy you are. And I was happy. So, because this was so great and so grand, and I was reading a very spiritual book. She was a spiritual lady as far as believing the word of what God says about pregnancy, but she was also very real about how pregnancy was. So I was believing, okay, there's not going to be any pain because this here is a gift from God and it's a miracle. And this baby's just going to slide right out. And my water's going to break so perfectly. And I said some of the prayers in there, but I don't know if maybe I didn't pray enough. Is that possible? Or maybe just it is what it is. And so on Wednesday, early in the morning, my water breaks. And I think my water broke. He says, okay. I'm like, what do you mean, okay? My water just broke. He goes, okay, well, you need to get some rest because I think it's going to be a long road in a little bit. Somehow he knew more than me. So I'm calling the doctors up at the hospital, the nurses on the staff there, and I said, okay, my water just broke. What do I do now? She goes, well, honey, you need to just wait because you're going to have to dilate. I said, okay. She said, you can come here, but you're just going to lay. So you can just wait. I said, okay. Well, you know, the contractions will start. So they started getting closer. I said, okay. And he's getting nervous. I'm like, well, wait a minute. They're not all that close right now. Maybe we can wait. He's getting nervous. I said, okay, we'll go to the hospital. We get there, they stop. So we drove all the way to the hospital. We're in the parking lot. He's like, so? I'm like, nothing happened, anything. Do we go back home? Do we get home? You know, I didn't want to get home. And then, okay, the baby's crowning. So he's like, well, let's just go in. We'll let him check you out. So we get in there. And I had an idea of how delivery was going to be. And so they're telling me all these things. I'm like, no, I want to go as natural as I can. That's what I'm believing for. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we can give you an epidural. We can have it here. That's fine. But I'm going to go natural. Well, when it started getting around 18 hours and I had not dilated, the doctor comes in. He's like, Shelley, understand, and we definitely want to meet what your goals are. We also want to make sure the baby is safe. So let's just try to find that balance in between here. He said, we need to start maybe a drip of some antibiotic just because your water's broke. It's been 18 hours. You're not dilating. And I'm like, okay. So we start the antibiotic, and through the night, of course, I had been up pacing Well, when they start the antibiotic, they started the Pitocin, the contractions started getting a little bit stronger. And boy, I'm going to tell you, they got real strong. They brought the little ball in there, and I sat on it. And people would talk to me, and I'm like, I got my focal point, okay? And I took it for probably 8 or 9 hours, and I finally looked at him and tears in my face, knowing that what I had dreamed in my perfect little plan, because I had my little birth plan right here, was not going out the way I wanted it to be. And I don't understand. This is your miracle baby. Isn't it supposed to be a miracle delivery, right? So I said, Philip, I can't take it anymore. I need the epidural. And he's crying because he didn't want to see me in pain. So I got the epidural. And from that time on, it was just a waiting game to dilate. And I'm laying there, and it's the wee hours of the morning of Thursday. And I'm like, I don't know how this is going to be. I'm a little bit scared. Things are not the way I thought they were going to be. And in the next room, we could hear, ah! Help me, help me. Blood-curdling screams. This lady's saying, help me. And he was sleeping, and I was trying to rest. And when that started happening, both of us looked at each other, and our eyes were this big. And we're like, really? Is that about to happen? I'm like, I am not going to scream. I'm not screaming. I don't care what happens. I'm not screaming. And there was a little bit of tension between us because I'm trying to stick to what I wanted my plan to be. And here's Dad over here. He's worried about Mom, and he's worried about Baby. And he just wants to see us all come out safe. I said, God, what are you doing here? And I remembered one thing the lady said in the book, and she said, you just have to come to a point where if you can't take it, don't try to be a hero. Nobody's asking you to be a hero. Take the medication. Do what the doctor's telling you to do, and just have the baby. And I said, okay, that's what we're going to do. So Elijah was born at 7:02. And he was 7 pounds and 2 ounces. That's around 7 o'clock that he was born. Yes. Beautiful baby. And we were so happy to be welcoming him home. And we were so happy that Mom and Baby were okay over this long turmoil of thinking about what we're going to do for our birth plan. And I thank God for being there. But I was started to think, what did you do here, Lord? I believed and I trusted in you. Where were you? You were sandwich prayer, the David sandwich prayer. God, I praise you and thank you for my healthy baby, that I was able to carry this child with a beautiful pregnancy. I don't understand here what just happened. I was believing for you to do something here. You are sovereign. God, you are sovereign. And I don't have a complete answer, but what I do know looking back from it is there was some tension between Philip and I at the time. Earlier that year, we had just come out of a separation. But in the moment of delivery, this man stood up, and he's in my ear, and he's coaching me everything I needed to hear. Everything I needed to hear to get through that push. And the few moments we had, when they're doing all their stuff, the doctors, and here we are cradling this baby, and he's looking into my face. And I'm not going to tell you what he said because it is mine, and it was very, very sweet. I can look back and say, that's what I got. If everything had gone so perfect in my delivery, I might have not gotten that special moment. Not that he was capable of saying those nice things to me, but because we had gone through such stress and the up and down, I think we had both gotten to the point where we realized the gifts that God had given us. And that's what God used in the imperfectness to show us how perfect He is. God is so multi-dimensional when He approaches things in our life. We may expect this beautiful story and this beautiful list, but the twists and the turns are His way of, just like a diamond. He's like a diamond. Every facet of that diamond, when it hits the light, just illuminates. So all these different facets of things that happen in our life illuminate Him. It may not look perfect, but as you're looking at that diamond in the light, it looks perfect. I drew some wisdom from something that Ravi Zacharias said. God is the grand weaver capable of creating an unexpected and beautiful pattern out of a broken life. We were both so broken people from our past. We were broken from infertility. We were just broken together altogether, being broken. Felt like that, being broken together. And this journey I've had to be a mother, it never gets old. I was at the doctor's office just this week, and every time I would go, before Elijah, every time I would go, they ask you all these questions about your medical history, and how many pregnancies have you had? And although I said none, I always said, but I adopted, because he was important to me. It may not be important to my medical history, but he was important to me. So I would say, but I adopted, and I have a son. Well, this time I was able to say both of my son's stories. And the nurse, she's taking notes. And so what now? Were you diagnosed with polycystic ovaries? Yeah? She said, me too. She said, I'm infertile too. And I adopted as well. We never know whom our stories are going to touch. And so I could tell she was filled with hope. And so they take me to another room. They get me all ready. And I can hear her briefing the doctor outside. This is my medical history. And I could hear the doctor say, okay, polycystic ovaries, okay. What? She conceived on her own? And I could feel the tears welling up. I know in my heart it wasn't on my own, but the doctor was baffled that I conceived a child. The doctor was baffled. That's how great our God is. He'll baffle doctors. What? She conceived on her own? I could hear it in her voice. And so she came in, and of course, I do give God the glory. Every time people talk about me and my kids or ask me to tell my story, it's always God. There's absolutely, as I've told you today, everything has been so broken in my life, and I've made so many wrong choices. The very fact that I am a mom and I have two beautiful children that have two very different, beautiful birth stories, it is because of God, and I will always give him glory. And when Pastor asked me to speak, this is my opportunity to tell a room full of people how God was glorified through my children already, and they've just started life. Oh, I can't see if y'all are crying. I did. I lost mine crying. I see some tissues going around here. You may have had some thoughts like me after seeing this video. This was an experiment. They obviously blindfolded these children. Can you pick your mom out? The ladies don't talk, just by smell and touch. Every child picked out their mother. You know why? Because you are so unique. You're so unique to your child. I think maybe you might be thinking something like me. First thought was, I remember my mom. I remember how my mom smelled. I remembered how her skin felt, how it felt to hold her hands. I remember how it felt when I was sad and hurt. I remember that about my mom. And then if you are a mom, you're probably thinking, have I done enough? Have I been enough? Am I that recognizable to my child that my child could pick me out? You could see the little bit of the anxiety in these women. Is my child going to pick me out of all these women? I'll be so embarrassed if she doesn't. But every child did, because you're so unique. And yes, you are very unique to your child. And yes, Mama, let me be an encourager to you. You are doing enough. You have done enough. And I think part of grabbing that oxygen mask for us is get among your cloud of witnesses. And what I mean by that is your fellow ladies to encourage you. We have a couple ladies groups in our church that get together for a Bible study. Yes, we do Bible study, but we also do mom. And we talk about being a mom. Get your Kristen, like I got my Kristen, who will encourage you along the way. My Kara, every time I have an issue with nursing, my friend Kara, she's in Florida, she's a nurse, and she's a lactation consultant. I'm always on the phone with her or texting her, what about this, what about this? And she'll give me advice, but she's always saying, you're doing a great job, Mama. You're doing an awesome job, Mama. And that's what you need. I can't tell you how many days, afternoons I've gone over to Amanda's house, and we've sat there, and we're talking. I've blown it. I lost my temper today. I did this. I did that. But we are encouraging each other. You're doing a great job, Mama. You're doing a great job, Mama. That's what you need. You need your mamas, because the world is enough telling you that you're not, but you are. You're doing a wonderful job, Mama. And I'd like to end with this little quote that Amanda put on her Facebook. It's Ann Voskamp. Beautiful. She's such a beautiful writer. Perhaps there is something more powerful to experience than a perfect mother. The wonder of a committed mother who simply humbles herself. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you today about being a mom and sharing my journey.